Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Heather Robinson. Heather Robinson is an educator, leader, and entrepreneur. Her favorite role is being a mother of two sons. Heather was born and raised in a small town in Northeast Georgia, Commerce. She went to a college at Clemson University, go Tigers, and has her dream career as an educator. She started out as a high school math teacher and ended her traditional education career as the executive director of the nation's most academically successful virtual school, Georgia Connections Academy. Heather is now a business owner of two educational-based businesses, Cross and Dot LLC and WiserEd Solutions LLC. Welcome to the podcast, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me, Kimberly. I'm so excited to be here this morning.
Yes, and I am so excited to have you here. Oh my gosh, this education is a hot topic.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
I'm looking at this, all this, I don't know what you call turmoil. Do you send your kid to school? Do you don't send your kid to school? What's going to happen with these kids who aren't doing their schoolwork?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, we need some answers here.
Absolutely we do. Absolutely we do.
So why don't we start out by you just telling us who you are, like where you grew up and how you got to be doing what you are now.
Okay. Well, as you shared earlier, thank you so much for that warm introduction. As you shared earlier, I grew up in Northeast Georgia in a small community called Commerce, Georgia. And I actually live about 10 minutes away now in Jefferson, Georgia. So I have returned home, but Commerce, very small town, not super diverse when I grew up. I went to Commerce City Schools. I'm a very proud graduate. And as you said, went on to Clemson University. But I think the most important thing to talk about in terms of who I am and in context of what we're talking about today is that I've always known that I would be a teacher. I've never had any inkling, desire, thought that I would do anything else with my life. Probably from the age of 3, I was in my room playing school with the fake chalkboard, and my Barbie dolls were my students. I've just always wanted to be an educator, and my first day in my classroom is a day that I will never forget. And math was it. Probably by 5th grade, I was in the gifted program, and I realized math is what I loved. Math is what I wanted to teach, and I took that trajectory and never looked back. So I was one of the few people in my college group who never changed majors, went right into a classroom from day one and felt at home there, and that was it. Once I graduated college and moved into teaching, I started my teaching career in DeKalb County, did that for 1 year, but got married and moved to Gwinnett County, did most of my teaching there. But the best year I had as an educator, as an in-class practicing educator, teaching high school math, was that I got to teach at the high school that I graduated from. That was sort of the coup de grace. And I actually also got to teach my cousin as he was a senior. So that was even better. But that was without question, the most rewarding year of my education experience, because I got to give back to the community that gave so much to me. And that really sort of tailored the moves that I made after that year. So I left traditional teaching that year because I was having my second son and I wanted to stay home more with both of my sons. And so I started teaching at this organization called Georgia Virtual School, and it is a program out of the Department of Education, and it literally was a mom and pop when I started. I was teaching math, I was at home with my kids, it was great. And then that ballooned into more leadership roles. I started managing professional learning, then I became the assistant principal of curriculum and instruction. And then after doing that for about 5 years, the opportunity presented itself. Georgia Connections Academy was opening, and I actually found out about Georgia Connections Academy from looking for school options for my son. I am a strong believer in school choice, and so even though we lived in a great community, I wanted to know all the options. And I just threw my name in the hat. I had no idea that I would even be considered for that job. But 2 months later, I was named the executive director of the first K through 12 virtual school in Georgia. And I was there for 8 years, and we accomplished so much. That is my second family. They still are my second family. I grew that school from 700 students to 4,500 students all across the state. We serve students in grades K through 12 in 151 out of 159 school districts in Georgia. The school is still blossoming. The school is still a beacon in the virtual school community in Georgia, in the nation, but it's also still serving students who need something different for whatever reason, who just need a different option. My work there really shaped and cultivated this desire to go into entrepreneurship. So I, as you said, own two businesses. I co-own a business called WiserEd Solutions, which is a substitute teaching services company. And our niche is virtual schools. So we serve several virtual schools throughout the country. But also I am the owner of Crossing LLC, which is my education consulting company. And that has been a whirlwind, amazing year. COVID has definitely changed it. But it has given me the opportunity to have a voice in a different way, which is really my life's calling. Outside of being a parent, my life's calling is being an educator and sharing all of these experiences that I have with others in the education community. So when I said I was going to be the school leader of a virtual school, my family thought I was nuts. I mean, just quite honestly, like, what are you doing? What is that? And why would you even do that? To now being in the situation where every school in the nation is facing the opportunity, I call it, to transition their programming and their learning environment to a virtual learning environment. I know I did the right thing. I know I followed God's call for my life. And I know that I am in the unique position to have all of those perspectives and to be able to share that with others in the education community is absolutely my pleasure. So that is, I'm a small town girl, big city dreams, and I am trying to follow the path that God has for me and really just doing the work that I'm positioned to do.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for that. And I know people are searching for answers on this topic on, what can we do? What are going to be the consequences of kids not logging in and not doing their schoolwork?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I've talked to several teachers and they said, at the end of last year, they were calling the parents, they were calling the kids, they were begging them, please log in. And many of them were just ignoring them. They just thought, oh, this is vacation. That vacation is going to cost them.
Right. Absolutely. It's absolutely going to cost them. I think I view it through a little bit of a different lens in that when we pulled students out of school at the end of last year, it was a completely unexpected turn of events for everyone. There was no plan. I have yet to talk to a school leader who said, oh yeah, we had a plan for that. Nobody had a plan for that. And when you are in a virtual school, one of the things that people don't recognize, and one of the things that I train school leaders and teachers on, is what I call that third eye. Now you have parents who have to be 100% engaged in their students' educational experience. At a minimum, they have to manage the physical environment for their student. That teacher is not the one sitting with your student in the desk and keeping eyes on your student. You are. And so for a parent, that is jarring. That is not what most parents ever signed on to do. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that when you get that feedback from teachers about, I have to chase these parents down. Yes, because they are running from you, because they don't know what to do. And no parent would say, I don't want my kid to learn. That absolutely isn't it. But there is a fatigue that comes along with this. There is a management issue that comes along with it. And you get to know your student in a very different way when you are their teacher, when you are their physical educator versus when you're mom. And I'm saying that from my own personal experience. My students went to a traditional school, and when they moved to online learning, I had to quickly figure that out. And I've been doing this for over 15 years. But I still had to make that shift from, okay, as your parent, I want to help you, support you, encourage you to reach out to your teachers. But as learning coach or now teacher to you, we got to get some organization and some management in place. You all can't be doing your schoolwork in your bed and all willy-nilly. Like, we have to do that. but they have the benefit of having a parent who's an educator. Your typical parent doesn't make that shift. And then we have to think about our educators who now have their own students at home. So not only are they trying to figure out how to be a virtual educator, they're trying to manage sometimes 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds who are already unmanageable, but try to manage that and keep your job moving forward. So there's a lot of dynamics that we've forgotten about in terms of making that one simple choice to move from the traditional setting to the virtual setting. But there's a whole new dynamic of parents who you now have to engage and you have to support as school leaders in a different way than you ever have before.
That's for sure. So let's just start out by saying, how do you set up a learning environment at home for your student?
Well, the key thing is it needs to be comfortable for your student, number one, but it also needs to reflect that this is a learning environment. So, and that can look different ways. You don't have to go out and buy one single thing other than a school supply that you might need. But you always need a designated learning space. So I can speak for my own children. One of my children liked the kitchen table. Well, that became his desk, and that's fine. But now that's a restricted learning space. When you have your laptop out, you're using this for learning. This isn't for eating. This isn't for slouching. It's for learning. So you have to put some protocols in place in terms of the environment. My other son wanted to do it in his room at his desk. That's fine too. But let's make sure you have all the tools and resources that you need there. The other thing, and probably even the more important thing, is you must create a schedule. You have to create a schedule. Think about your child's experience in the building. Bells are ringing, telling them when to go where. You have to recreate that in some way in your home. No, do not go out and buy a bell. Don't ding that thing. But write down somewhere what time you expect them to get up, what time you expect them to start. But also take the benefits of that flexibility in that you don't have to get up at 7. Unless that's what your school says you have to do. If you are like my older son is more of a night owl. And so he might be better off starting school around 9 or 10, where my younger son is like me. He is up and at 'em. When he wakes up, let's go. And so he wanted to start school at 7 o'clock before the teachers were online. And so you have the ability to work with your students on that. Let's set a schedule that's going to work for us. Let's decide when transitions are going to happen. Let's decide when lunch is going to happen. When do you need to take a break? And you do need to watch your student for, it is not healthy. And I'm saying this as a virtual school educator. Nobody expects your student to be in front of a computer for 8 hours. And if that is the expectation, have a conversation with that school leader or have your school leader call me, because that is absolutely unhealthy. But you want to build those breaks in. You want to establish a schedule and a routine, and you want to stick to that as much as you can. Minimize those disruptions as much as you can. If you're working, build their schedule around yours. Communicate with your kids when it's okay to come in and talk to mommy about something that they have and when it's not. They're used to doing that at school. They don't just go to random teachers all day and ask questions. They have a designated way and time to do that. Establish that within your household. Is it hard? Absolutely. Is every day going to be a challenge, especially those first 10 days? Yes. But will they get used to the routine? 100% they will. It just takes time and a schedule. A schedule is the key.
Yeah, and so some kids are actually doing a virtual school where they're seeing the teacher. Some kids are, I know when I worked with K-12 kids, they had some live teaching and then they had assignments to do on the side. And when parents, let's say you have a international parent, they don't speak English very much, and then they have this child at home. They can't help them. What are the kind of options they have for help? Do you know?
Well, school districts are still required to provide that support, just as they were in the traditional settings. So if you have a student who's an English learner and their parent is not a native English speaker or even speaks English, then schools should be providing translation resources for those parents to communicate with the school. but also there should be some sort of language support for that student that can also partner with that parent that should be administering that virtually. When I was at Georgia Connections Academy, we absolutely had an EL program, and we had 2 EL teachers, I believe, who pushed into our classrooms, supported those families. We also partnered with a company to provide documents and translate for our families. So if I had a family who spoke Russian, I had a service that could be on the phone with us and could translate back and forth for both of us. So schools have those resources. Families just have to ask if they're not getting them. 99.9% of the time, as families enroll in a school, they do what's called a home language survey. So the school is aware that they need that support.
Okay. Well, that's great to know. And
Yes.
now, do you see people actually coming together in neighborhoods and things like that as far as helping with teaching? Because I know I was a single parent when my kids were coming up, and there's no way I could have stayed home and taught them. In fact, I actually hired personal teachers to homeschool them because I thought that was a really great option, and my kids all learned kind of different.
Yeah.
So, I hired either, homeschool teachers, or we had a homeschool where we went to school 2-3 days a week, and then they'd have to do the rest of their work at home.
Yes.
So, how are neighborhoods, or how are people handling this?
Well, I think that depends on what's happening in your school district in your neighborhood. But for those families who are choosing virtual options, then I am seeing a lot of what we're calling homeschool co-ops. And so a lot of families partnering together, and if their students are in or about the same grade range, then they're coming together physically or even virtually, like you and I are meeting in Zoom, and they are either bringing someone in to support them, or they are dividing up the work amongst parents. So I may be in the homeschool co-op in my neighborhood, and I'm the math person. So the kids come and meet with me, and I work with them for 2 hours during that time. And then they shift to the next mom or the next dad, who is the social studies person. So I'm seeing a lot of that pop up. And what I am really, really excited about is how that's empowering a lot of our families. A lot of our parents are getting more engaged in the school process, which is, as a school leader, everything that you want. But they're also starting to understand that I can help my kid. I can support them. This math isn't too far gone. Or if it is, I have a resource in my neighborhood that I can reach out to. And I feel like it's bringing communities together in that way. I know a friend of mine, my business partner actually, has someone in that she found on care.com. Who is coming in to support her while she's working with her young kids, and is coming in one-on-one to support them. But then I have another friend who I worked with at Georgia Connections Academy who was telling me that in her neighborhood, they're doing exactly what we're talking about. They have built a co-op, and they're building schedules. And of course, she, coming from a virtual school background, is the schedule manager. But they're building a schedule so that all of the students are getting served and getting personal time with someone, even if it's not their teacher in the classroom. So they're in Gwinnett. They have, they're doing online learning at this point, but they're working together as a neighborhood and as a community to make sure everyone's student is supported. And bringing in additional resources. Virtual field trips got really big in my neighborhood. And my sons went on several during that March to May with a lot of folks in our neighborhood. So parents are finding resources, they're finding support, they're supporting each other. But yes, the rise of that co-op is definitely coming up. I got a lot of pings on LinkedIn from just people I know asking me, how would we do this? So I'm really excited to see in a year how that is going to transition into more daily practice for more people.
Yeah. So tell me about these virtual field trips.
Oh, okay. Well, one that I just found out about is Disney. Disney was giving virtual field trips where you could tour the park online. So a lot of places, because people couldn't physically come to their location, they started creating platforms where you could visit remotely. And I just was amazed at the places. I mean, you can travel the world from your computer as a student. And so a lot of teachers were bringing those virtual field trips in, going on those with their students, kind of guiding them through those places that they went. And so that's a wonderful way for students to really be able to feel the curriculum without physically being there. It's as close as we're going to get at this point to some things.
Yeah, but it sounds wonderful because,
Yeah,
so sometimes just sitting in your house, you think, oh, there's just not enough stimulation, or you need something
exactly.
different.
Or you've watched everything on Netflix. So let's go to Disney. Absolutely.
So that is wonderful. Are there other options for people? Let's say that they are in the public school, but they want to find other options. I know a lot of people have kids with like special needs and things like that. And I know when I was working with the K-12, a lot of the students were special needs, and that's why they were doing virtual. So what other options are available for people?
When you have a special needs student, that really is you already have a village. You already have a pretty deep and strong community that's supporting your child most times. So just making sure that you're keeping those related services in play. It's a lot easier if you're tied to a public school at this point, because by law, they are required to help you and support you in continuing those things. But also, for any students, it's really just about connecting and making sure that your students stay connected to their friends. So my oldest son is less of a social butterfly than my youngest son, but I noticed that he was a lot more at ease when they moved into virtual learning. And as much as I can't even believe I'm saying this, he was connecting with his friends through his Xbox. They were playing games together. And, before this, I was like, get off that game. But when I recognized, oh my gosh, this is a way for him to stay connected to his friends. Apparently kids these days don't talk on the phone. And so they were staying connected that way. My younger one was struggling because he didn't really do that. And so I would encourage him to call his friends, or, go out with your mask and walk. And I would see his other friends in the neighborhood ride your bike, see who else is riding the bike. They discovered a lake in a neighborhood across the way. So I think it's getting your students, keeping your students connected to their community, however you can do that. And it may be like this. You can get Zoom for free. Go on to Zoom, create a Zoom for your household, and have them connect with their friends. I can't tell you how many birthday parties I have attended. My birthday was August 6th, and I didn't hold a Zoom party, but I just went to one last week, where people are remaining connected however they can. A friend of mine did her family reunion in Zoom.
Oh, because, amazing.
Yes, because they didn't have the ability to come together. So being creative and making sure your student is staying connected. Also, talking. I'm finding myself talking to my sons a lot more. I was really grateful for the slowdown. I was really grateful to have them here all day, every day, because I feel like I got to talk to them. I feel like I got to get a little more connected. Even though, it would have been great to be out at work and in client schools, I really felt like I got to connect to my own personal children a little more, got a little more engaged in their school setting, got a little more familiar with their teachers than I would have otherwise. But when it goes back, rolling back to our families with students with special needs, maintaining your resources, ensuring that you hold the school accountable to providing you that support, because they've gone virtual. And I've heard this just a few times, but it breaks my heart. Because they've gone virtual does not mean your student does not get their services. So ensuring that you hold the school accountable to that, and that the school is working with you on some creative ways to implement those services is key. Don't let up on that at all. Not at all.
Wonderful. So you're talking about, talking more with your sons. Talk a little bit about parenting, how the parenting is changing now, because I think a lot of people are struggling with all these changes. So how do you be the best parent in this situation?
Well, the first thing I always say to any of my fellow parents is, give yourselves grace. None of us are perfect, and we're certainly not going to do this perfectly. I know I haven't. I've definitely, lost patience with my sons. I've definitely lost patience with myself. I've definitely had those days where I'm like, I don't think they learned a thing today, and I accomplished nothing in my businesses today. And so we're just going to restart tomorrow. I tend to be a person who is an optimist and approaches things. My motto is positive, professional, and proactive. And so I try to get ahead of the curve. I try to keep a smile on my face and stay positive. And even when things don't go my way, figure out a way to get them back on track. So just in terms of parenting though, patience is key. And understanding that every day is a new day is for me the foundation, but also take the opportunity to embrace the flexibility. Try not to see it as a distraction or as an impediment, but capitalize on the flexibility that you now have in your life. When I'm working with teachers, one of the things that I always say to them is, we finally got to the place where you don't have to wait until the end of the day to take your restroom break. Because as a teacher in a traditional classroom, that's not something you get to do. And I think people don't realize that. We don't get bio breaks. You are on the go. You got to be in your room managing students from the time the bell rings in the morning until they're gone in the afternoon, even at lunch. And so take it, and a lot of them laugh at me, but they're like, you know what? You're right. Like, I can get up and go get water if I need to, or I can get up and take a bio break if I need to. And I'm not losing students, or I'm not, my classroom isn't going to be in chaos when I come back. And so as a parent, looking at it through that same lens is that I get to have lunch with my kids during the day where I normally wouldn't. Or maybe I have time to actually cook instead of running out to get something to eat. Or maybe I have more time to read a book to my child when I wouldn't have normally been able to do that before school started, because we're rush, trying to find the uniform, trying to get shoes on, trying to get out the door. You don't have that anymore. And so, one of the things I enjoyed was just being able to I drink coffee. One of my sons doesn't do either, but one of them drinks cocoa. Just sitting down and doing that for 10 minutes in the morning, where before I'm screaming and yelling about, get your book bag, let's go, we got 5 minutes, and counting them down. Instead, we're getting the opportunity to do that. And we've gone for walks outside. We never did that before. We would ride our bikes, but them actually walking or running with me hasn't ever happened. So taking advantage of that flexibility and learning about your child as a student is a very insightful opportunity. Watching how they learn and figuring out what works for them, not so that you can teach them, but just so that you can understand who they are as a human being, has been really, really enlightening for me. So I don't really have any advice. I really just say, try to take advantage of the flexibility and the opportunity that it presents. Don't make it more stressful than it has to be. And also use the resources you have in those educators. That is what they're there to do. Believe me, they are a little bit off kilter, not a little bit, some of us a lot off kilter too, in trying to figure this thing out, but they're there to support you and they want to support your student. So when it comes to the teaching and the learning, don't try to take that on yourself. When it comes to what your students should know, your teachers are able to give you that. Now, the physical management, yep, that's on us. And that's where that stress comes in. But if you're not sure how to do something, either you advocate for your child or teach your child how to advocate for themselves and ask for help. That's been a very big get for my high schooler. I noticed from the beginning that it would be, Mom, can you help me with this language arts paper? Or I'm not sure about this science thing. So he was coming to me because he knew I would figure it out. But about halfway through, I'm like, why don't your teachers open office hours? Why don't you go and ask them, or I'll help you with the language of asking them. But, we were building his schedule for this school year, and I just showed up at the meeting and I said, you're leading this meeting. Because one of the things I realized is that he leaned a lot on me to communicate for him. And that's not helping him grow into an adult and grow into a young man. And so making sure that, you're giving them those tools that they need and the support that they need. They don't need you to be their teacher. They need you to be their parent.
Beautiful. And that just reminds me about kind of like life balance. So many parents are trying to balance, they still need to go to work.
Yep.
Or, if they're working from home, that might be, in some ways it might be a little easier, but in some ways you still got to be that separation so they can get their work done.
Yep.
but how are people balancing that? What's the best way to just have that life balance?
For me, it's a schedule. For me, I need to tell myself when to stop. So a question that I get when I work with a lot of schools is, I share with them, I'm a calendar person, and I share with them my calendar, and I can literally see the fear come in their eyes, because my calendar every minute is planned. And so even from the time of get up, kids to school, like I block that on my calendar. I block that hour on my calendar. And so it's very intimidating for others when they see my calendar, but I build balance in there. I have a hard stop. I stop working at 4 o'clock every day. It doesn't mean I won't go back to it, but from 4 to about 7, I reserve that for my kids. I reserve that for cooking dinner or going out to dinner or chatting with them or working out together or whatever it is we're going to do. I reserve that for them. Now, does that mean I don't answer an email from my phone? No. If I need to, I will. But I try to make sure that I'm available when they get home from school, and they're usually, everybody's done around 4 unless we have practices and all that. But I try to make sure that I get that balance in every day. Because if I don't, I find that I'm unhappy. And then my household is unhappy, and my kids are irritated because they haven't had time, and we haven't had time together to catch up. So however that looks for you, what I would say about balance is just make sure that you're thinking about it and make sure that you're planning for it. One of the pieces of advice that I give schools that I work with is make time to not work every day. Make sure that you are making time to do things that are not work related every single day. Because when you are working from home, work is staring you in the face. It is my computer. I have 3 computers in this room, but they're in this room. They don't leave this space, because if I walk around with my laptop or my iPad, I'm going to be working. The temptation is too great, and I love my work. And so I have to really physically isolate it and walk away. When I walk into that family room, that's family time. When I walk into that kitchen, it's time for me to cook something or make something for my kids. So I have to have those types of boundaries. But my advice is to ensure that you get balance. Make sure that you make time not to work every day. Sometimes for me, that's at 5:30 in the morning. If that's the only time I can get in to just have some Heather time, then that's what I do. But you got to make time to not work every day, because work is going to be there. And this sounds kind of morbid, but one of the best pieces of advice that someone gave me, especially when I started the virtual school, because I was working 24/7, sleep was not even on the table when that school got launched. And so one of the pieces of advice that actually one of my board members gave me was that, listen, if you resign or heaven forbid, something happened to you tomorrow, we're going to post your job and somebody else is coming to do it. Make sure that you're not investing everything you have in this. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Mm-hmm. But it speaks to a larger thought process, which is make sure that your life is a quality life. And this has thrown all of us for a loop. Mm-hmm. But we're 6 months in now. Let's start getting back to some quality in our life. And that takes focus. You have to intend to do it. But one of the things that I'm trying to work on, and this sounds crazy, but I'm trying to be more social. And so to just be more social. And so even though we're in a pandemic, I'm going to those birthday parties on Zoom. I'm trying to make sure I'm staying connected to more people. But you have to do that intentionally. You have to make sure that you're thinking, okay, what am I going to do for my quality of life today? And that's sort of something that I learned, like I said, when I started the school, was that, and I'll be transparent, I had gained like 60 pounds, and I had, my nutrition was terrible. My patience was less than this short. Like I just was completely caught up in my work, and my quality of life was suffering. And I had to take a step back and say, okay, what the board member said was right. If you die behind this desk, heaven forbid, somebody's coming in here to do this work tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So make sure that you are living your life beyond here. You have beautiful children, you have a family, make sure that you're valuing that just as much. And so that would be my advice, is just to get balance, be intentional about it. Be intentional about it. Focus on it. Think about it. When you're driving in your car, what am I going to do when I get home to make sure that I'm happy today? What am I going to do when I get home to make sure I've made my kids happy today? My thing, I'll tell my kids a random joke of the day. I've just discovered TikTok. And so I'll go on TikTok and I'll find a joke. But if I can make them laugh by texting them a joke, then I've had a good day. If that's all the joy I get in that day or the laughter I get in that day, then it's been a good day. But you have to be really intentional about that.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I wrote a book several years ago called Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life. And when I was in the research, they said one of the number one regret that people don't have when they die is they'll say, I worked too much. In other words, their regret was that they worked too much. They didn't spend enough time with their families. That number one regret is not spending time with your family and friends who love you.
Yes.
Because you were working too much. So that is so important. And also, as you're talking about the calendar, I'm a visual person, so I have my calendar color coded. So when you get it color coded, and my color for work is green. So when there's too much green on there, it's like, okay, we need to do something. Exactly. It's all green right now.
Yes, that's exactly it, Kimberly. You hit it. I am a color coder and a blocker too. My work color is pink. And so if my calendar is all pink, I got to readdress. So I got to figure out how I'm going to get some green and purple on there. That's my color. And navy blue is for my kids. So figuring out how to sprinkle some more of that in there. You're absolutely right. You're right. I love that.
Yeah, it really helps to see how exactly what's happening. So yeah. So why don't you tell us more about your actual business and how you serve people?
Okay. Well, with Cross and Dot, it is an educational consulting firm, and that is very broad. And so I did that intentionally because one of my goals in coming out of the more standard, I won't call it traditional, but standard trajectory for a person with my background was that I didn't want to just limit my experiences to working with schools. Because I believe very strongly that the skill set that educators have translates in all kinds of ways. If you want something done well and done on time and done correctly, you ask a teacher. Ask someone who is managing students and stuff every day, and they get it done. So as an educator, I know how to make it happen. I know how to get it done. And so, and also working in a virtual school, that skill set of managing people remotely, because I managed a staff of 175 people remotely. Not a single one of them other than me and the admin assistants worked in the building on a daily basis. But those skill sets, I started to really look at what do you know how to do and how can you use that to serve people. Of course, it translates very easily into a school. And now my virtual schooling experience is very highly sought after. But I also have a skill set in organizational management because I did manage a staff of 175 people remotely and all of the tools inside a building and outside of a building. Resource management, boards, working with school boards, but working with boards in general. I do a lot of governance support, Robert's Rules of Order, helping people design meeting agendas, planning and execution, data management. So all of those things, we do that for schools, but we also do them for businesses, for nonprofits. One of the things that I'm anxious to get to work with are some of my local communities like Peace Place, Habitat for Humanity, the Boys and Girls Club, and figure out how I can help and support them through Cross and Dot. With those skill sets. So we also do some project management. I just finished up a project with a state agency where I managed the distribution of 6 inventory sites across the state because I have skills in project management, just in terms of execution of tasks, delegating those tasks, and ensuring that those tasks get done. So even though we're an educational consulting firm, we use our skills in education. What I say is our roots are in education, but the fruit that we're bearing is showing up in all sorts of different ways.
So who would come to you for your services?
Of course, schools would come to me for their services. School boards come to me. I work with a lot of nonprofit organizations and also businesses. So if you have a small business, and we also design learning experiences. So if you have a small business and let's say you get a new technology system, and you need someone to come in and do some hands-on training, maybe that wasn't offered to you from whoever you purchased it from, or I had a client who purchased it secondhand. And so got the stuff, but never got the training that came along with it because the original user used it. So they called me and said, can you develop a training plan for my 5 employees? Absolutely, I can do that. So curriculum writing, designing a learning experience, and ensuring that your employees know how to do what you need them to do. Businesses call us for that all the time.
Okay, awesome. And if people wanted to get a hold of you, do you have websites? How do they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. My website is www.crosscrossand.dotllc.com. And then you can reach me at Heather, Heather, at cross and dot, all spelled out, LLC.com. My number is 404-754-3570. And you can also find us on Instagram at cross.16, on Twitter at cross.16, and on Facebook and LinkedIn, just look up cross and dots with the ampersand.
You know, I love the way you even delivered that. If only a teacher spells it out because she knows
Yes.
that a lot of us don't know how to spell it. I love that. That is amazing. So just a personal question for you. What gives you the most happiness, joy, fulfillment in your life?
Oh gosh, right now what gives me the most happiness, joy, and fulfillment in my life is seeing my sons turn into young men. That has been, as a parent, you don't know what you're doing. And so to see them now, they're almost 13 and my oldest is 15, to see them now as young men who are becoming really self-sufficient and thinking about their own futures, I'm really, really proud of that. And they just bring me a lot of joy. Parenting is tough, but I just find it very, very joyful. I also what brings me joy is every day I get confirmation that I've made the right decision for my professional life. That leaving a very comfortable and predictable, and I could have retired from the work that I was doing at Georgia Connections Academy very easily. I didn't have to leave. I chose to leave because I had this push and this calling to use my skill set in more diverse ways. And there have been times where I'm like, oh boy, have I done the right thing? But as soon as I feel that, God will send me a message. Yeah, you did the right thing. You made the right decision. You're operating in exactly the order and the steps that I've laid out for you. And that brings me a lot of joy. Trusting my intuition and my instinct and that voice, whatever that is or whatever you call it, brings me a lot of joy. And I love my work. I love my work. I love being able to impact students is what I was put here to do. Being able to serve children is what I was put here to do. And so even though I'm not doing it in the lens that I had thought I would be doing it for the rest of my life, seeing kids smile and really now seeing the adults who are now my students catch something or learn something or get an idea based on something that I've shared with them brings me an immense amount of joy as well.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and for all your wisdom and advice, because I'm telling you, anybody with a kid that's a student right now needs it.
I feel you. I'm the same boat. So yes, it is, but we can do it. We can absolutely do it. We can do it. And I'm here to help you, so call me if you need me.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all.
So one last question before we get off the podcast. Give your best advice on living the most incredible, amazing life.
My best advice on living the most incredible, amazing life The one thing that I've learned as an adult is trust your instinct. When you feel that no, trust that no. When you feel that yes, trust that yes. But I'll also say that one of the best books I've ever read is called The Year of Yes. And reading that book just really flipped a lot of things in my head for me, because I recognize that I'm a person who kind of says no. And so say yes. If you're afraid or it's something you've never done before, say yes. Have a new experience. Try something new. Have a conversation with somebody you might not have ever had a conversation with before, and be open-minded to hearing their perspective. I think we need a little more of that in our world. But for me to have an incredible, amazing life, I need to say yes, and I need to trust my instinct and do the things that bring me joy. And I think that's it.
Wow, thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Oh, and also know it's never too late for anything. You're never too old. You're never too young. No opportunity has passed you by. If you want to do it, do it. We have access to things in this world that we never thought we would have 20 years ago. So if you have a dream, go for it. Why not? Do it. I'm always an advocate for doing it, trying it. Failure is just the next step to success. So just keep going.
All right. I love it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.